Hi, this is Richard Jacobs from myduiattorney.org, and I'm here today with Lawrence Wolf. He's a criminal defense attorney in the Los Angeles area of California. How you doing, Mr. Wolf?
Thanks.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to do the interview. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.
If you don't mind, we'll go right into the questions. And my first one is, what motivates you to be a criminal defense attorney, and why in particular do you tend to work on DUI cases a lot?
Well, after 35 years of practicing criminal law, it's really the most exciting part of the law that I can tell. It's the type of situation where you can get immediate relief for a client, where you can get immediate results for a client, and you can get immediate results for a client. And that's even more so true in the criminal justice system dealing with DUIs. The way the law is in California is there's this now 10-day requirement that you have to contact the DMV within, and so that's really an immediate assistance of the unfortunate individual who's been arrested for drunk driving.
Okay. So over the 35 years, how many DUI cases have you handled?
Oh, well, probably as a prosecutor, I handled thousands, and as a defense attorney, I've handled thousands. So I guess that's thousands and thousands.
Wow, okay. So through all these years, is there any typical circumstance of the people you've defended or prosecuted? Are there more men and women, or first-timers, or?
It's really interesting. There is certainly more characteristics of an individual common to an individual arrested for drunk driving, but it really cuts across all barriers, all lines, all types of individuals. Certainly there are more first-time offenders, and I think that that's fortunate for the fact that that shows that at least individuals, are getting the message, and I think the message is obviously so severe in California and Los Angeles for the first time that does cut down the recidivism for individuals arrested for subsequent offenses. Certainly more men are arrested than women, and probably the age group tends to be more between 25 and 45 for the majority of individuals arrested for drunk driving.
And one thing I've never asked actually is,
why are you asking me?
uh,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
how about the physical circumstances? Are there more people arrested at night, or in the daytime, or in certain areas where they're driving?
Yeah, well, there's the most common area to be arrested is right outside of a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning. And even though that may sound funny, the reality is that is sad but true. It's no easier for a police officer to just sit outside a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning and, for lack of a better word, pick off people who most likely have consumed alcohol and are driving. More specifically, to answer your question, certainly between the hours of 12 and 3 o'clock in the morning, probably 2 o'clock in the morning is the most frequent time when individuals are arrested for drunk driving.
Okay. And do a lot of the clients that you see, do they tend to have levels, blood alcohol levels that are close to the .08 limit, or a lot higher?
Again, that is a wide range. I think probably the highest limit I ever had was a client who not only had a .40 and the limit being a .08, but he also had LSD in his system. I think that was a extreme situation. Certainly first-time offenders, there's a much wider range. I think you'll see individuals on first-time offenses certainly close to the .08 limit, and also going up to the .20 limit. Multiple offenders tend to have much higher readings than certainly first-time offenders, and that's for the main reason that those individuals have become more accustomed to alcohol, more accustomed to the ability to drive under the influence of alcohol, and therefore their tolerances are much higher than the first-time offender.
Okay, so do you see more DUI cases due to alcohol or due to drugs?
There's a far greater number of individuals who are arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol versus driving under the influence of drugs. And the reason, therefore, I think is twofold. Once is that individuals consume more alcohol than they do drugs. And there's a greater amount of individuals who obviously consume alcohol and then drive. Also, I think that the effect of drugs on individuals is not always the same as the effect of alcohol on individuals. And in fact, therefore, the amount of alcohol a person may consume would cause their driving to be greater impaired than if they had consumed some type of drug.
Okay. And have you seen any effect from the medical marijuana laws in your state? That are you starting to get more cases due to marijuana DUIs, or has it no effect?
I don't think that the legalization of marijuana has, or the medical marijuana has really had a significant, if any, effect on individuals. The reality is it's if you have a marijuana card and you're driving under the influence, it's still against the law. Even if you don't have a card, it's still against the law. So it really has no effect on that aspect. The aspect it has the effect on is in regards to possession. And if you have a medical marijuana card, then obviously it's not illegal to possess it, but it is still illegal to drive under the influence of it.
Okay. And are there any laws in California that address drivers with BACs below zero point zero 0.08, or drivers who have drug metabolites in their system but aren't necessarily impaired while they're driving?
Well, if they're not impaired, regardless of what they have in their system, then they would not be committing a crime as far as drugs go. And the reality is that it is very difficult for a prosecutor to prove that the amount of drug substance that the individual has in their system equates to being under the influence. There is far less research and studies done, certainly for drugs, than there has been done for alcohol. So it's a more of a difficult prosecution burden than anything else. In terms of limits, in California, if you have a 0.15 or above, then that requires an increased punishment. Other than 0.08 or below, then it's not a crime as to the limit. However, you still could be convicted of driving under the influence.
Okay. Um, what else do you know that's unique about the DUI laws in either California or Los Angeles County and the other counties you serve?
Well, it is interesting to the extent that depending upon which courthouse you end up going to versus which prosecutor you may end up having, it really varies widely. There are some courthouses that are certainly more stringent on drunk driving. There are some courthouses that are solely dedicated to enforcing the drunk driving laws, and therefore those courthouses tend to be less willing to perhaps look at it an alternative sentence, whereas there are other courthouses that may be considered more liberal and are certainly more willing to look at the option of an alternative sentence.
Oh, I didn't know there's dedicated DUI courthouses. Do they have a particular name?
Well, in Los Angeles, it's the Metropolitan Courthouse, and 95% of their cases are driving under the influence.